welcome to Inside Tennessee, along with my colleague John North. I'm John Becker. We're talking about a historic special session this week in Nashville. Joining us to do that, our regular panelist, Susan Richardson-Williams. She's a Republican and runs her own PR firm.
And good morning.
Good morning. Don Bosch is a Democrat and runs his own law firm.
Good morning, John.
Good morning. And joining us by Zoom on his way home from Nashville is Representative Jason Zachary. He is the Deputy Speaker. We're so glad you pulled over and that you're safely at a spot where you can talk to us in your truck. Representative Zachary, great to have you with us. First, let's start out with why you were a yes vote on school vouchers in this session.
Sure. Yeah, it's good to be with you guys. Thanks for accommodating me. Just simply, I'm about empowering parents to make the best educational outcome and educational decisions and to pursue the best outcomes for their children. So that's by far the most important for me is in voting for school choice. But this particular bill was very unique. We did it the Tennessee way. It's unique from any bill that is passed in the country. It provides protection, baseline budget protections for public schools. This does not pull one dime out of the TISA formula. These are scholarships. These are not vouchers. And again, doing it the Tennessee way, the only way for this program to expand, because it's 20,000 scholarships. We have 962,000 kids in public school. This is 20,000 scholarships. The only way for this program to expand is through legislative action. We have to take an additional vote if this program's ever to expand. And so because of those reasons, it was a step to take. The president supported us in this. We're glad to have that support, and so I'm glad we got it done. So next week we can get back to regular session.
Looking ahead, Representative Zachary, one concern from people is accountability. And what the results we saw in the pilot project for vouchers were not so great. In fact, your own education commissioner said the results were nothing to write home about when it comes to the student performance inside the pilot project. We saw them score lower in English skills and math skills than their public school peers. What makes you think this will be better by expanding that?
Sure. Again, I'm always going to go back to we can either empower government or empower parents. And so this empowers parents to make the best decisions they feel like fit the educational outcomes and desires they have for their child. And so we're going to empower parents to be able to do that. In terms of that testing, in terms of the comparison of results, I've talked to our Department of Education about that, and they've talked about if you compare those to kids who left inner city schools and you compare the results and the nuances with that, to be completely transparent with you, I have not looked at those. I've simply talked to our Department of Education. But again, I'm confident in parents ultimately making the best decision for their children. And if they feel like their child is in a situation that doesn't provide them the best educational outcome, we're now empowering them to be able to move their child and give them a different option to hopefully improve the educational outcomes of their child and to put them on a better path toward success. 2
points of fact as we move forward. One, if you're in a failing Knox County school right now, you can move schools if you are a parent to an A school if you're willing to do that. True?
Yes, in Knox County, you have the ability to move, but it's my understanding. The grading is one thing, but when the last time I talked to the Department of Education, we technically did not have any failing schools in Knox County.
One other point of fact, right now, it is up to a private school whether they admit any new students. They can choose not to admit someone even if they may fit every qualification. True?
Private schools certainly have the discretion to deny, which they do now. Private schools absolutely have the discretion to deny someone entry into the school for certain qualifications, whether it's CAK, CCS, whomever. So absolutely. Now they can deny, but they cannot discriminate. We talked about that today on the floor. Federal law is very clear about discriminating against a child, but they can deny a child just like a public school is able to deny a child if they can't meet the certain needs and that child moves to a different option.
Jason, a couple quick questions. Will you remind us, please, when does this kick in? Are we talking fall, the next school year start?
Yeah, it'll go into effect next year, and then what I talked about, the baseline budgeting and the protection of schools funding, that reflects this year, this fiscal year for next year. And so what I mean by that is, and we may talk about this later, this bill basically has a hold harmless provision. So let's just say Knox County lost 5,000 students. They're not going to. They lost 5,000 students out of the 20,000. Whatever the baseline appropriation was through TISA, which is the funding for education funding formula, whatever that baseline number was in 24-25, we as the state will hold them harmless and ensure that funding stays in place the following fiscal year. So for us in Knox, Hamilton, Shelby, Davidson, it's not as big a deal, but rural communities, they have never had that protection, to where Obion County, I know, was one we talked about. They lost a large number of children when one of their factories closed, and it had a significant millions of dollars of impact to public education. And so we're stepping in to say we will actually provide that baseline protection where schools never have to worry about their funding dropping below, starting in year 24-25, below that fiscal number, that appropriation that they get through TISA today.
And do you know, were any specific kinds or types of private schools eliminated in terms of being eligible to accept these students or this kind of funding? I ask that because I heard some kind of chatter today that there were some particular kinds of schools that were not going to be allowed to take part in this.
Yeah, great question. Yes, John, to answer your question, yes. So private schools and classes 1 through 4, classes 1, 2, and 3 will be able to participate. Class 4 will not. And that all comes down to accreditation. Period. End of story. Accreditation. And for some perspective, there's roughly 596 private schools in the state. Roughly 300 of those schools do TCAP testing now. And again, that's certain part of the accreditation you have to go through. But yes, there's 1 through 4 classes that 1 through 3 are eligible for the program.
We're going to take a quick break on Inside Tennessee, back with questions from our panel for Representative Jason Zachary. We appreciate you being with us on this Sunday morning. Again, we're taping in the middle of the week here, Thursday, because session just wrapping up and the representative is on his way back. We're back after this. Back on Inside Tennessee with Representative Jason Zachary. He is coming back from special session lasting 4 days in Nashville. They covered hurricane relief for Northeast Tennessee as well as immigration. We're talking about school vouchers right now. Susan?
Yeah, Jason, I wanted to ask you, originally in the bill there was a $2,000 bonus for each of the teachers across the state as sort of an incentive to accept vouchers or accept the program. And there was an amendment passed that the local school boards have to approve, in spirit at least, have to approve it before the teacher approve vouchers before the teachers get their $2,000. What's that about? Is that like being held hostage? How does that work?
No, yeah. Great question. Yes. So we made sure in the language, and forgive me if I get the section wrong, they are simply approving Section 4. Please forgive me if I don't have anything in front of me. If they approve Section 4, which is the bonus section, then those bonuses will come to them. But our concern is they need to tell us, yes, we want them for teachers, so they're appropriated directly to teachers. Because so many times, I think just about every year I've been here, we vote for a teacher raise, and many times that money does not go to the teacher. So if you want to give these bonuses to your teachers, then we're asking you to opt in. Has nothing to do with agreement of education scholarships. It is clear in the language that it's just Section 4 that yes, we want the $2,000, and that will go directly to the teachers. So we're simply holding them accountable.
Okay. How would parents go about applying for a voucher? If I wanted my child to go from public to Catholic or CAK or Webb, how do I go about that? And who do we apply to? Do you go to the Department of Education? Is it local? How will you announce that? What happens? How do we find out about it?
Yeah, another great question, and a reporter asked that of the governor at our presser at the end of session a few hours ago, and that's all through rulemaking, so that'll be determined. He was asked directly about that, and his answer is that will be determined, and so I know the answer to that one because he answered it. So we'll know in the future as the department goes through the rulemaking process.
Okay. So, Jason, I'm going to circle back to something you were talking about with Susan. You said that for school boards to allow their teachers to be paid the $2,000 bonus, they didn't have to approve of the vouchers program. They just had to say, we want the money. I'm looking at Section 4 that says, in order to receive funds from the department for purposes of awarding teacher bonuses as described, the Board of Education for the LEA must first adopt a resolution affirming that the LEA would like to participate in Section 4. That is the vouchers bill. It sounds like to me it was almost a bit of a hostage crisis, so to speak, that the school boards and all these school boards that have said no now have to say, yes, Governor, thank you, we'd like our $2,000 and we agree with your bill. Am I reading this wrong?
No, I mean, Don, the way you read it to me is the way that we talked about it among ourselves, and the way we talked about it with legal is that the school boards are saying that, yes, we are supportive of Section 4. We agree with it for the $2,000 bonuses, and those will go to our teachers.
See, so the way it reads, though, Jason, it just says for Section 4, not for purposes of the specific part of it that pays teachers $2,000.
Well, that's the legislative intent, and again, Leader Lamberth made that really clear. And so I don't know if that was the final language or if there's a different aspect of that language in the bill, but we specifically on the floor, Leader Lamberth was the presenter, and he talked about Section 4 and made clear it is to ensure that that $2,000 doesn't go into the system and get spent somewhere else. That $2,000 goes to the school system and gets directly to the teacher.
Okay, so this may provide some clarity, Representative Zachary. There were a number of East Tennessee school boards who said, we don't like the idea of school vouchers. Do they need to go back and rescind that and say, we actually do like school vouchers, or can they stay with that statement that this is a bad idea and still receive the money?
Yeah, there was nothing in that required them to rescind anything. They simply will need to affirm per Section 4 that they want the $2,000, and that will go directly to the teachers.
Jason, in looking at the vote when you all finally wrapped up on Thursday, I shouldn't say finally because you all worked very quickly, one thing that struck me was that some of the newbies, if you will, my word, just elected appeared to be, they voted no. They were allowed to vote no. And I wondered if, whereas folks like yourself, the veteran party leaders, committee folk who have been around a while were yeses, I just wonder if you all didn't say to some of the newbies newly elected, if they felt strongly about it, you're okay, it's going to pass. If you want to vote no, you can vote no.
Well, John, that's another good question. And so I know Aaron Mayberry, he's new, he voted yes. I know Lee Reeves is new, he voted yes. Rick Scarborough, who's Anderson County, who I've gotten to know really well, it's a great guy. He voted no. Renee Jones of East Tennessee voted no. Tom Stinnett voted no, and the others are escaping me.
Did you mention Renault? I can't remember. You may have said Renault. I may not have heard her.
Yeah, Renault. Yeah. She voted no as well. And so again, I mean, they're representing their districts and their constituencies and how. They just ran. So I mean, they won based on that. And so in terms of the makeup of new and old, new and those of us who have been there a little while, I know there was some conversation about pressuring members to vote and ensuring votes this way or that way. But man, I was in the room with Speaker Sexton. I met with many members myself, and I know Speaker Sexton didn't strong arm anybody. I mean, he said vote your district. The governor, I know, met with numerous reps and senators and just said vote your district. And I mean, based on the election results, for many of us that were returning, there were only 7 new people, but many of us returning ran on school choice, and the people returned us back. The governor was very clear about school choice. He got 60% of the vote in his reelection. Same with Marsha Blackburn. And so again, you vote your district, and the speaker is comfortable with that, of course, and just empowers people to do that. And so every single person did what they thought was best for their district.
We're going to take another quick break on Inside Tennessee. Back with more, and Representative Jason Zachary kind enough to join us on his way home from special session in Nashville. We're back right after this. We've talked a lot about school choice and vouchers with Representative Jason Zachary on his way home from special session. Don, you also are focused on immigration.
I looked at the immigration bill, Jason, and I saw some of the evolution. As you can imagine, I'm very troubled, particularly with the provision that criminalizes any official in any town or city that creates a quote, sanctuary city or policy that supports that. I'm really troubled with that because that really does strike a big brother and thought police. Why did you approve that, and why do you think the legislature approved it?
Sure. Yeah. Well, illegal immigration is a serious problem in our country. The president has a mandate. We have a mandate based on the last election, and so there's obviously certain aspects of the bill that not everybody agrees with. But that the particular aspect you're talking about says that if an elected official knowingly is going to violate and break state law by either by voting on policy related to a sanctuary city, he is committing a crime. And so anybody knows that's simple. If you don't vote on sanctuary city policies, then you're not committing a crime. And so if you take that step, I mean, I know that was floated a year or two ago by the mayor in the city of Knoxville, and I know there's been some saber rattling in the city of Memphis and Nashville. And so if you choose to take that step and you propose and vote on a sanctuary city policy, which is a violation of state law, then there will be criminal penalties.
But voting on a policy, that seems very vague to me. So if you're for example, a city that says, hey, if someone's in dire need of health care or basic K through 8 education, we're going to encourage that person, if they're here, to enroll in school, to go to a hospital and seek treatment. I'm afraid that the way it's worded is very vague and frankly subject to challenge pretty quick in the court system.
And you're probably right in terms of the challenge, Don. Just about everything we do seems to be challenged, and so we'll let the courts work that out if that is the step somebody takes. But in terms of what we passed, we were told it was constitutionally sound. And again, it's a simple way to avoid it. If you don't vote on or propose sanctuary city policies as they are defined in our code, which they are defined. Again, I don't have that in front of me. But if you avoid that, then you don't have anything to worry about.
Jason, we've also, in that legislation, there's a creation of a border czar and some enforcement division, I think under the Department of Safety. Do we have any idea who this border czar is going to be at this point in time? Anybody we know?
Susan, no. In terms of the immigration enforcement officer that will lead that office, I do not know. I haven't, I didn't even ask the governor for a name. He'll obviously appoint that person, and that will be someone who will work closely through his administration with locals and the federal government. The state, it was my understanding the state had not been a part of the 287G program, which Sheriff Spangler is already a part of.
Right.
And so they will be responsible for opting into that and then working with local communities that choose to opt into 287G for the deportation of illegals and criminals in our community that are illegal, and working with the federal government to be able to remove them from our state. We have roughly 162,000 illegals in our state, and it costs Tennesseans, according to FAIR, about $971 million a year. And
wow.
So again, that's an initiative of the president that we join him in, and we're just working to ensure that our state is as safe as it possibly can be. I have already talked to Sheriff Spangler's office, working on some numbers about what the illegals look like in the jails currently and what that number looks like in our county. And from Kimberly that works in his office, I'm waiting for those final numbers, but they told me it has grown dramatically over the last 4 years.
Jason, what's the fiscal note attached with this bill? How much?
I'm sorry, Don, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. How much is this going to cost us? This immigration bill?
I think roughly the fiscal note on it was $5 million. Yeah. I believe I'm right on that.
That's what I read.
Without having it in front of me.
Yeah. I think that's correct. There's also a piece in there about non-citizens and having IDs. So be some kind of a special mark on the ID if you're not a citizen. Is that correct? And how does that work?
Sure. Yeah, correct. If you're legally here but you're not a citizen of the United States, your license will look different, just for easy identification to ensure that only citizens of our state are actually voting. So if you are not a citizen, you're allowed to be here legally, but you're not a United States citizen, obviously you don't have the right to vote. And so it's to make that clear, the identification between the two.
We only have about a minute left, Representative Zachary, but there was some criticism from Democrats, even on the floor during the vote, about the failure of this legislature to do more for people in need of hurricane relief sooner. Why do you say it takes this long to deliver that relief, and how do you answer that criticism?
Well, I think I would answer it the way Representative Faison answered on the floor, who is in that community in Cott County. He said it's not government's primarily responsibility to help people in need. Government is an incredible conduit and plays an important role, but the community of East Tennessee, the state of East Tennessee, and really the country stepped up to provide support. The state did the $100 million grant program to help people, and the state was taking steps. And so I know there was talk about a special session, and we finally got that done this week. I wish we could have done that sooner. And according to those who are representing East Tennessee, Upper East Tennessee, that there is still significant need. They feel like needs have been met along the way. And again, the private sector, the community has stepped up. And so I'm glad we got that support done now, and they're going to get the additional help and support they need from our state. And there are additional bills that are going to be running through session when we're back next Monday that will also provide additional support.
Representative Jason Zachary, the Deputy Speaker, we appreciate the time. Safe travels on the way back to Knoxville. Again, thank you for being generous with us today.
Thank you, guys. Good to be with you.
We'll be back with our talk round right after this. Back on Inside Tennessee, this is the vote in the special session on the school choice plan, and just want to put those names up there so we can break it down a little bit. I want John North to walk us through, but again, 54-44 with one person present but not voting, so it needed 50 was the magic number to pass. It got 54 votes. John North, what stands out?
So a few names will stand out there. We were talking off air. A fair number, relatively speaking, of East Tennessee lawmakers ended up voting no. Folks like Lowell Russell, who's down in Monroe County. There is Renault, who won the primary down in Chattanooga, a Republican, who ended up voting no. Rick Scarborough voted no. He said he was going to vote no. He is the newly elected House representative out of Clinton, beat John Reagan. Those are some names that stick out of the House.
Let's move to the Senate, and then we'll get some analysis from Don and Susan. But let's pop this up. 33 members of the Senate. The breakdown there was 20-13, 20 yes, 13 no. They only needed 17 votes. So again, this one passed by 3, like the House passed by 4. John?
A couple names I'd call right quick. There's Jesse Seal. He is brand new. And what's interesting about him, and we've talked about Jesse Seal before, is that he beat Frank Nicely in the primary. Frank
on a
Nicely.
premise that, that he may have gotten voucher money.
Frank was supposedly, he had said he wasn't for vouchers. And now we have Jesse Seal, who ended up casting a no vote. You mentioned Harshbarger. That's a big vote for him, but what my guess is in Northeast Tennessee, they really don't like this.
Susan, what pushed it over the edge? We talked about rural lawmakers being key to Governor Lee getting this over the hump. How did he do it this year versus last year?
Well, I think he added more incentives. The $2,000, the hold harmless to the schools. The public schools were not going to lose any money off of this.
Still being debated, by the way.
Well, it is, but it sounds good, yes. And I think what you saw, just looking at those votes, where you saw the new folks, the deal was cut. I don't think there was any question about that. They got out in 4 days. Now let's just think about that. So I think probably the leadership said to the newbies, hey, if you campaigned on a no vote, go ahead, we've got the votes.
Don, 30 seconds. What's your biggest concern moving forward?
There's not enough oversight. This is really tax relief for the moderately affluent in Tennessee, up to $170,000 for a family of 4, and that there are going to be a number of problems in that we cannot compare apples to apples, how these voucher students will do compared to public school students. I just think they're rife with problems and not enough structure and oversight to manage this right now.
Again, we'll see how that works shaking out moving forward. Again, as Susan asked Representative Zachary, this takes effect in the next school year. We will be back next week on Inside Tennessee, looking to have another lawmaker with us who voted against that plan. We'll break that down for you on Sunday morning next week.